Hello, and welcome to the Long Island Local Podcast, brought to you by Audio Workstations here in Bohemia, New York. Let's jump right into the conversation with a Long Island local business owner. Welcome, everyone, to the Long Island Local Podcast. We are in Season 2, and today we are here with Allison, Massa, functional nutrition, lifestyle practitioner, and breathwork facilitator. Those are three separate things that I need to learn about completely. So we're just going to go ahead and start right at the beginning. And if you could tell me a little bit about functional nutrition and maybe how that differs from nutrition without the word functional in front of it, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, it's one title, Functional Nutrition and Lifestyle Practitioner.
Okay.
It's all combined.
Got you. So it's one big functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner.
Yeah,
okay,
it's definitely a mouthful.
Yes. But teach me about it. And if you want to break it down into components, that's fine.
Sure. Yeah. So functional nutrition views of healing by the whole person. So there are three basic things that we abide by. One is that all people are unique, all things matter, and everything is connected. So those are the three that we really pay attention to. So what we use is a knowledge of the full body systems in order to help our clients heal. So that includes everything: networks and relationships, stress and resilience, sleep and hydration, and nutrition. So all of these things combined to really help somebody heal or help somebody maintain their wellness that they already have.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it does seem like the normal mode of medicine or health in Western culture is more like symptom whack-a-mole. So I'm assuming that this is like trying to go from it the other direction and sort of just like spend more time getting to know everything about a person instead of a bullet point list of what's wrong and how do we medicate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the focuses of functional nutrition is root cause resolution.
Okay.
So backing it up, going way, way back and addressing these symptoms at the root cause, trying to find, okay, what could have went wrong in this person's body that they're now experiencing the symptom, instead of just trying to give a remedy to the symptom, really trying to correct it at the root of the problem. Right.
Assuming that there's a cause and an effect, and what you're looking at is an effect. And so maybe not throwing another possible cause at it, you know, something that can give extra side effects and then you're piling on problems. So what would be a good example of like something that would, maybe be handled a different way with a different type of approach that you would handle a specific way, like to the functional aspect?
Okay. So I have a really good example for this. So I had a client who had this mysterious skin rash for about like 6-ish years.
Okay.
And it would come and go, and she couldn't really identify what was going on. She was in and out of doctors. She tried prednisone. She tried some other like antifungal creams and stuff. Nobody could really tell her what it is. Some people said, oh, maybe it's a fungal infection. Others said maybe it's autoimmune eczema. There was really no resolution. Everything that the doctors gave her worked for a bit, but then as soon as she would stop using it, it would come back.
Right.
So one of the things I do in my practice is I have a pretty lengthy intake form. It takes about an hour to fill out. And then what I do is I transfer all that information to a tool called a functional timeline, which basically maps out that person's entire health and life history on a chart. And so this includes any medications they've taken, any illnesses, any major life events, like any traveling, moving, maybe a divorce, a death in the family, really anything that can be classified as trauma that might have affected them. So what I noticed on her timeline was that a lot of her symptoms appeared during this period where she lived in Hawaii. So what I asked her is I said, hey, when you were in Hawaii, did you live in any moldy environments? She was like, oh yeah, basically everywhere I lived had mold.
Right.
And I was like, that's really interesting to me that now you're telling me this, and that's when the symptoms started to appear. So I also read her blood work and was kind of reading in between the lines. So the thing with when you get your blood work taken is whatever lab you have your blood drawn from, the high and the low, the L and the H, the ranges they give you are completely dependent on the population that has gotten their blood drawn there the previous year. So they'll take the average of everybody in the last year who's had their blood drawn there, and they'll use that as the range. So
that's actually surprising to me to learn that.
Yeah, you'll notice if you get your blood tested at 2 different labs, the ranges will be different.
So there's not necessarily like one agreed upon standard that is taken over like a large amount of people over a large amount of time. They're literally, each lab is refreshing their averages yearly based on their own individual intake of data.
Yeah, they are.
That's weird.
It is really bizarre. But there are set pathological ranges and set functional ranges that do exist.
Okay.
Just for some reason, the labs don't use them. I don't know why.
So does it help to sort of get those out on a piece of paper and then compare them? So you're looking at sort of the lab's average interpretation, and then you're looking at some sort of more concrete functional average and trying to figure out where the happy medium might be?
Yeah. So like in my practice, I use the set pathological ranges and the set functional ranges. So basically, if you fall in between pathological and functional, that's okay. You're surviving, but we really want to fine tune those numbers to get you in that functional range to make sure you're thriving. So what I noticed with her blood work is I'll take blood work from any amount of time, really, because it's the trends in the blood work that really matter. You know, if you take blood from one point in time, like you could have just ate something weird that day that maybe fluctuated numbers. Right. But what I noticed from her blood work is some of the enzymes that were low or high are dependent on certain nutrients like B vitamins, C, zinc, etc. So what I noticed is that she actually had some deficiencies in her body. Mm-hmm. And when we have a deficiency, the body has to compensate elsewhere to make up for that, and it's not able to heal in the way that it should, that it's designed to do. So we ended up realizing that she had some deficiencies in zinc, vitamin C, and all the B vitamins. So what we did was we had her on a liposomal vitamin C, which means that it's soluble in both water and fat. And the reason we did that instead of going to food sources was because citrus would inflame her, would inflame her skin.
There's also a bunch of sugar that you're getting when you intake citrus, and maybe some other interactions that could happen.
So yes, definitely. But in general, fruit sugars aren't what people really need to be afraid of. Right. It's more of those refined processed sugars. Yep. So yeah, we did that. We incorporated some grass-fed beef liver for some zinc and some other nutrients. And then we brought in a methylated B complex to help her liver process any toxins that were maybe a little stuck in there.
I have a question randomly about B vitamins, because this is something I was told. There was a combination chiropractor, nutritionist person that I was seeing a number of years ago before I left New York and came back. But anyway, he had mentioned that there's 2 forms of B vitamins, and one of them is actually got a little cyanide prefix in there.
Yeah.
And he said stay away from that one. Is that something that you've picked up on as well? Is that a known thing? Yeah.
That will be the form of vitamin B12. It comes in 2 forms, either methylcobalamin or cyanocobalamin.
I was hoping you would pronounce them so I didn't have to. Yes. I remember reading them, but I was nervous if I said them out loud. That would sound silly. But yes. So the one with cyano on the beginning is sort of somehow related to cyanide. Is that, and it's they're relying on you to kind of separate that molecule out and get rid of it on your own because it's cheaper, essentially?
Yeah, it's definitely cheaper. Okay. And you know how it is. Go where the money goes. Follow the money.
So they can call it B12, but in your opinion, it's not worth taking that one?
It's not worth taking that.
Okay, so that's the second time I've heard that. I'm going to go ahead and just say that it's true now.
Yeah. For the B vitamins, you definitely want to get the methylated versions because the liver has to methylate them anyway. Okay. That simply just means adding a carbon and 3 hydrogens to it in order to process it in the body. So if it's already methylated, that's less work that the body has to do.
Right.
And more energy that person can use to heal elsewhere.
Yeah, ultimately, if you're taking these things, you're trying to help your system out and not give it more work to do. So that makes total sense. All right, I didn't want to throw you from your story. But,
oh, you're good.
So, okay, so the vitamins and the skin rash, we're working towards a resolution with this particular example, just to put you back on story course there.
Yes.
So you got her on the vitamins, and how did it go from there?
So then her diet was very tricky because a lot of things actually caused her to kind of break out in worse of these rashes, and she would get itchy and then blotchy and stuff. So it was myself and also an Ayurvedic practitioner, which is like old ancient medicine from India.
Yeah, Indian. Yeah, I only know of it from the chai tea.
Oh, okay.
But I know that it's more than the chai tea.
Yeah.
We had some chai here earlier with EE. Thanks for the chai tea.
Oh, nice. So her and I worked alongside to kind of guide my client along a gentle elimination diet.
Okay.
So we removed anything that was bothering her for the time. And then we kept her on kind of a very basic diet for, I want to say, about 2 to 3 months while her body started to heal.
What is the basic diet like?
So it's going to be different for everybody. So like for her, she wasn't eating grains. She wasn't eating certain fruits. She wasn't eating hot foods. Like that's going to depend with each person.
So it's like each person, you're kind of asking them, like, based on your knowledge of your own body, what are the things that definitely don't bother you? And let's just stick with those and eliminate everything else. Is that the idea?
Fair enough to say.
Okay.
Yeah. In my practice, I use a food, mood, poop tracker as well.
That's catchy.
Yeah. So I can kind of see what they're eating and make some connections to how they're feeling after they ate that, to how their digestive system is handling that by looking at their poop. So that's one of the tools I use to kind of help somebody determine what we should eliminate for now and what we should keep in.
Right.
And ultimately, the goal is that we want this person to be able to eat whatever they want to eat at some point in the future. But
Right.
while the person's healing, eliminating anything that's going to cause inflammation or disturbances in the body is crucial. So we did that, and it slowly started going away to the point where it did go away. And then we slowly started adding some foods back in, and we would do it very slowly, like maybe one food every week.
Right.
Sometimes even it would be the time of the day that this person consumed the food. Like fruit, some citrus fruits didn't really work for her in the evening, but it was fine in the morning.
Interesting.
So yeah, the body is like so incredible. So just really, it's my job to help the person pay attention to detail and kind of guide them along this process so they
Right.
don't feel overwhelmed.
Kind of like your body is trying to tell you what it prefers that you eat, but it doesn't know how to use its words. So
Right.
you have to like tune into what it's trying to tell you.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that makes
Exactly.
perfect sense to me. I had my own small experience with like an elimination diet having to do with acid reflux, and I was on some medicine for a long time. That then a bunch of like suspicious news came out about the meds, and I was like, "Thanks, Big Pharma, you're the best." And then somebody handed me a book. Someone who actually worked at a blood lab for a while, funny enough, and she handed me a bunch of books about the subject, but one of them connected with me, and it was specifically about the amount of fermentation that has to go on in your gut and trying to minimize it, essentially. And it kind of ended up in a sort of elimination, but he had this real scientific formula about the fermentation potential of the thing that you're eating, and the whole idea was trying to minimize it because it was turning into gas, and the gas is coming up and causing acid reflux. And it was like, okay, if you eliminate these things, and it was to some degree, he was like, it's going to vary per person, but on the whole, he kind of broke it down into a science about the amount of carbs and the amount of sugars, the amount of sugar alcohols, and the amount of fiber, and he put it together in a thing that you can just plug into an equation if you know the exact weight and detail about the food that you're eating. And he actually had like a glossary of all these different foods, and they're like generically measured fermentation potential according to him that you could then work from.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of work, and I did it for a little while. And I was like, okay, this works. And but as soon as I would add back some of the things that I wanted to add, it would just come right back. And it was like, okay, I think the realization is that there's certain foods that I really do have to stay away from if I want to maintain, not feeling these symptoms. However, they're really yummy foods.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes a balance. It becomes like a philosophical debate in my mind at that point about like pleasure and the time I have on earth, and like, do I want to enjoy this ice cream or not? And suffer the consequences later. But anyway, I appreciate that approach, because I do feel like there's a whole bunch of weird stuff in the average, let's say, American diet. Maybe it's because food and it becomes food products, and they're meant to stay on shelves for long periods of time, and maybe our bodies are not used to things that are meant to stay shelf stable for really long.
Definitely not.
Yep. Anyway, so this makes perfect sense to me, this functional nutrition thing. And so does it weave into the lifestyle practitioner thing, in that like well, nutrition is such a big part of lifestyle? Is it sort of like that starts to inform the whole thing?
Yeah, like, so for the example you said about pleasure and wanting ice cream, right? One of my passions is like helping my clients figure out, okay, how can we bring in a type of ice cream or maybe sorbet or something to kind of replace that while the person
Scratch
heals.
that itch, yeah.
Yeah. Like, so for example, in your situation, you're like, oh, I really miss ice cream. Well, it's like, okay, what about finding a protein powder that is the flavor that you like, and maybe mixing it up with a frozen banana and some dates in a blender.
Yep.
And so you're getting that creamy texture and that kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to fill that void while you heal.
Yeah, and I did a certain amount of that on my own, I think naturally, just in my wild search for things to enjoy. One of them was creating a sugar-free it was like a riff on a peanut butter cup, like a Reese's, but it was like all dark chocolate, no sugar, with like an almond butter in the middle.
Ooh, yum.
And it took a while to make. I had to borrow my friend's like industrial blender one summer. But that, and then there was also like some of the fruity flavored drinks that are not so high in sugar, like Bai, or some of those. I would lean on those for like, oh my God, I need something sweet. And it's like, okay, well, in this formulation, it's like 3 grams of sugar instead of like 46.
Right.
For
yeah,
like the Snapple or something. So
yeah.
So anyway, it's like you got to find something that works for you, and it's like doesn't drive you crazy. But it's like it is a process trying to like shift how you eat, especially because people form eating habits like so young, and a lot of parents, I feel like, just kind of go with whatever they don't complain about. It's just like, oh, they like this, and they're not complaining when they're little, and so we'll give them this. And then it doesn't really have any regard for how good it is for them. But obviously every situation is different. My brother, for example, is like very into like cooking really great ingredients for his little kids, and they eat so much better than I think most kids do. But it's like better than SpaghettiOs, but I feel like if a kid likes SpaghettiOs and it's like they're like only going to eat one thing, it's like, all right, give them that thing. And now you have like a entrained sort of flavor receptor for a not so nutritional thing that stays with you for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah. I can completely relate to that, because as a child, I was fed like Velveeta, rice-a-roni, cheese doodles, I'd always have Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's. Like it was just chaos. And then eventually down the line, it caught up to me and I got really sick, which is why I do what I do now.
Wow.
So I had to do like a complete 180 basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that it has to get to a point often where things are really bad to like discover something really great, but often that's how it happens. You know what I mean? You're experiencing some sort of really bad problem and you're just like that much more motivated to find a solution. And then like often it's like, it can be something that's like life-changing if then you then go into it, you know what I mean? As a whole job and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it has to come to a point where like the pain of staying the same becomes worse than the pain it will take to change.
Right. Yeah. And it's you start balancing those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to just bash on American fast food like totally, but
oh no, bash on it.
Yeah, it just listen. It seems like what it is like taste bud hacking. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's just like I listen sometimes to other podcasts with like evolutionary biologists, and they talk about this type of thing where it's like, to your ancestors, if they found like something sweet, it was like, okay, this is to be cherished because we have to know to come back to this tree or this bush or this thing because food is rare and this is a plentiful source of nutrition. And they wouldn't have had the ability to like binge on it all the time and overconsume anyway, because there would have been sort of a natural restriction of what was available based on, it was growing somewhere. You can only pick it so much, right? So there's like a portion control mechanism that's just built into nature, right? And same thing with like, really salty stuff. It's like you wouldn't have access to it on the scale that it could hurt you in like hunter-gatherer societies or whatever. So it's like, but if you did come upon it, it was like wise to store it and make note of it and come back to it. So it's like our brains are tuned into things like salty and sweet really hard. And it's like, now we've got like food systems that are just designed to just like hijack that sensory overload and just like kind of drive you to just have it more and more because it is there. The McDonald's is right there. You know what I mean? It's not a bush that's running out of berries.
Right. Yeah, that was a really beautiful description of the whole real pandemic that's happening in America.
Thank you. I just said it off the top of my head, but I'm glad you found my McDonald's bashing beautiful. But no, it makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that I got off those medicines because there was all kinds of like weird side effects that were coming out about it, and I'm still not able to eat as good as I want to eat all the time because I'm always struggling with that, especially because it's hard when you're on an elimination style diet to do things like takeout or eat out.
Oh yeah.
It's like
it's literally impossible.
Yeah, it becomes like a world of meal prep, and really like it becomes a second job, just like making sure that everything that you need to have, you have, so that you're not like in desperation having a slice of pizza if you're not supposed to have a slice of pizza.
Oh yeah.
And living here in particular in the like most bountiful land of carbs, like, I joke that living on Long Island is more expensive because there's a hidden bagel and pizza tax that they're not telling you about. It's just built into the cost of living. And they're so good here. It's really hard for me to drive by like my favorite bagel place or my favorite pizza place. And there's some really good ones right around the corner here. And I'm like, hey, that's a local business. I want to patronize that local business. And there's all kinds of reasons to have that slice or that bagel, but it's a struggle anyway. Yeah,
for sure. And, I see that with my clients a lot. And so I really try to help them like be prepared for all situations, like always have something. This one company I started partnering with called Purium. They're an organic regenerative agriculture company. So they make basically these power shake and super meal shakes that you can take with you on the go. And they give you a shaker bottle, and it's all like organic fruits, veggies, certain grains, even functional mushrooms like reishi and chaga and lion's mane, some sea vegetables, and some adaptogen herbs. So herbs that help the body respond to stress better, help build resilience. And I really love working with them because it's been great for my clients who are like, I don't have time to make a healthy breakfast and lunch every day.
That is a struggle. And I've tried different products. Like there's the Athletic Greens is a company that advertises on a bunch of other podcasts I listen to, and I can deal with the flavor of it. I tried to get Edie into it. She wasn't into it.
I don't like it.
It's not great for. Listen, I'll say this. Here's my trick with Athletic Greens, and they're not paying me a sponsorship for this podcast, but maybe one day. I'll put like a little bit of like a fruit juice that's like one of the lower calorie fruit juices, just a little bit, and then it kind of the fruitiness takes over and it kind of hides some of the. I think some of the aftertaste issue is that they have enzymes in there, and like you have a very short period of wetting enzymes before they start to smell and taste funny.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've even taken digestive enzymes in capsule form at time to sort of help with different digestive issues. So I think that's like it works good, but the flavor is always a challenge, right? Finding something that is convenient and also flavorful. So what was the company that you said that makes the shakes?
Purium.
Okay. How do they spell that?
Purium.
Purium. Okay. Cool, because I was going to misspell that by audio memory. Cool. So, all right. So tell me how the breath work fits in.
Okay. Yeah. Love this question. So the type of breath work that I facilitate is called rebirthing breath work. So rebirthing breath work is essentially inhaling and exhaling through the nose, but with no space in between the inhale and the exhale. So no pause.
Okay.
And when we're first born, when we're babies and we're young children, we actually breathe like this. It's as we get older, we start taking pauses between our inhales and exhales. You'll notice if you have any pets, if you just like lay with them and listen to them breathe, they're doing the same type of breath. They're not pausing in between their inhales and exhales. So this type of breath work is really gentle and it's done laying down, and it's really meant to connect a person to their subconscious to help them work through any traumas or connect to themselves deeper on a spiritual level, to process anything like anxiety or depression, to help them really just relax and drop into the present moment. It's essentially another form of mindfulness practice, but a little more powerful because there's that added component of circulating oxygen through the body at a faster rate.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've done a little bit. I have a friend who like meditates with a particular breathing technique, and I feel like no matter what the breathing technique, the fact that any breathing technique that you're focused on puts your mind on breathing, and then you start maybe appreciating the fact that you do this all the time without thinking about it. And it's just like your respiratory system is this assistant that you don't appreciate very much often. You know what I mean? You kind of take that for granted, and you're like thinking about other things and talking, and breathing is a background activity. And I feel like anything that makes you focus entirely on breathing is sort of like acknowledging this assistant that you live with and saying like, oh yeah, I see what you do all the time. That's like, thank you for that. I kind of need that. And to like, spend some time with that inner breather that we all have. It's sort of like a little reset, meeting that happens.
Yeah. Like breath is the foundation of all life, right? Like without the breath, we wouldn't be alive. And, all day long when we are breathing, we're breathing in such shallow amounts that we're only taking in enough oxygen to survive. We're not taking in enough oxygen to thrive and really regenerate our cells. So when we're consciously doing this breath work and inviting more oxygen in, the oxygen is what is carried in our blood. So then we're moving nutrients around the body as well during this breath work practice. What's also really cool is we're moving our lymph around in our lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is basically the body's garbage disposal. So it takes care of removing any parasites, fungus, viruses, any toxins, either from inside the body from regular metabolic processes or from outside the body from pesticides, skincare products, plastics, all that kind of stuff.
And there's a whole lot of plastics out there, isn't there?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of plastics out there.
I've listened to some scary interviews with the scientists who studies the amount of plastic in what we interact with and consume all the time, and it was a very depressing interview. So, but I'm glad I know.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned the oxygen moving around, that is part of the role of the vitamin B as well, right? Is like helping that oxygen be transported. Is that the case?
Iron more does that because iron is present in the blood, but B vitamins help the liver detox. They're really essential for any detox pathway in the liver. There's 6 different pathways. So yeah, anybody that's deficient in any B vitamins will not only have a slower detox system, but it could actually lead to things like depression and mental health issues because the B vitamins are precursors for a lot of our neurotransmitters. Yeah.
And that's that thing about, body and mind sort of being as one, right? And maybe we separate them too much, and like, not to take away from like whatever's going on with someone's like psychology and their inner thoughts, but it's like, if they're not like having the best nutrition, then they're not like fully prepared to even like take on the things that are going on with actual thoughts, right? It's just like more prone to be unenthusiastic about everything.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard. It's like, so what comes first? Do we need to support this person's body, or do we need to support this person's mind? And I think doing a little bit of both at the same time is the key. So like incorporating super nutritious, rich foods, like, with a lot of my clients, I'm saying that I use the Purium shakes just to get like a good baseline nutrition in them so that they can have the strength to move forward with making bigger changes.
Right. Right.
And then also coming in with the breath work to relax them and just to like start connecting them with their body.
Yeah.
Start having them feel the sensations in their body and being aware of those. And also when we practice the breath work regularly, then we're more in tune with our breath on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, our breath and our emotions are our partners. They affect one another. So if we're angry, we might notice we're breathing faster and harder. Sometimes when we're anxious, we might be breathing shallow, or sometimes we might even hold our breath completely.
Yeah.
And then that can even lead to issues with digestion because the colon is actually attached to the diaphragm by some tendons. So if we're holding our breath all day, our colon is not in the right position it's supposed to, and that could even lead to constipation.
Wow.
So this is kind of where like the lifestyle blends with nutrition. It's like looking at the whole person again. And like even for acid reflux, something as simple as having the person sit eating up straight.
Right.
Having them take a couple deep breaths before they eat so they can kind of drop into that rest and digest state instead of that fight or flight mode.
Yep.
Making sure they're chewing their food very thoroughly to assist that whole digestive process.
Yep, that's one I try to be conscious of.
Yeah, and it can be really hard, especially when you're really hungry or something tastes really good. You just want to like suck it in.
Or if someone's like asking you a question while you're trying to, you know, and I'm like, try restarting the computer. Okay, so you view the breath work as sort of like a mechanism to help people stay in tune with themselves so that they can actually sort of take the changes and the advice that you're giving them and sort of be more aware of themselves.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So where do you go to learn about this stuff? Because I know you had a journey from like having your own like personal health issues to then finding out about this stuff. How do you go from learning about it in general to learning about it to the extent where you can practice and help others?
Good question. I like that. I love talking about this. So I actually did a 4-year degree in biochemistry and molecular biology at the University of Albany. And that kind of, I took a class second semester junior year that got really into metabolism and things like that. And I just found it so fascinating. Then about a year later, I got sick. Right after I graduated. So I kind of did a lot of my own research during that time period. I found out I had a bunch of food sensitivities, which led me to researching an elimination diet. And once I was able to heal myself, which took about 3-ish years,
Wow.
Probably would have went a lot faster if I had already known everything and had somebody to guide me. But yeah, I kind of was just like tossed around by the Western medical doctors, and like everyone was like, your blood work looks fine. Like we can give you Adderall, we can give you this. And I was like, I don't want to do anything.
Right.
But so then I actually went on to become a health and a life coach because I thought, you know, health coach, I can help people in this way so they don't have to go through the confusion and the struggle that I went through.
Yeah.
But it just didn't go deep enough for me. I'm a science girl. I wanted more like concrete physiology and biochemistry.
Yeah.
So then I found this online school called the Functional Nutrition Alliance, where I went to school for another 1.5 years and learned how to be and got my certificate to be a practicing functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner.
Okay.
And then the breathwork kind of just came to me. I had somebody reach out to me who had her own breathwork teacher school. And, you know, she's like, I have 1 spot left for the semester. Like, I feel like you might like it. And I had never done breathwork before. I had a mindfulness practice, like a meditation practice and a yoga practice, but I had never done breathwork. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's go for the ride. So I went for that ride, and it was like the most transformative, beautiful couple months of my life while I was going through that training.
Wow.
I had to breathe twice a week with my partner. So she was facilitating for me twice a week. I was facilitating for her. So it was a really deep dive into the self, into my desires, into, you know, what direction I want to grow in this life, what changes I need to make, and my purpose and all that kind of stuff.
So the training for the breathwork was also sort of like a little monastery moment for you, in the sense that you got to look inwards and figure out some stuff about yourself as you were learning it.
For sure.
That's like a nice double whammy.
Yeah. It definitely is.
Okay. All right. So then you started integrating it into the functional nutrition stuff, and now it's sort of like that's your brand of combining these two things. Is that specific to you think, or are you aware of anyone else who's combining these two things?
I'm not currently aware of anyone else who's combining the two things, but I don't think I've looked hard enough. I'm sure there are people out there that are combining the two things.
That's fair. Yeah. But I like, taking things that aren't always together and putting them together and, making cool combinations of services and, ways to help people. So that's very cool. All right. I just learned a whole lot. And now I'll move off of this stuff in the business realm for a second and just ask you, okay, when you're not doing this stuff for work, what is a hobby, a way to relax, a thing to get away? Like, what's one of the things that you do to unwind?
Hanging out with my cats.
Okay.
I love
cat person.
They go outside, so I love kind of watching them be curious and fascinated about nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those moments where I'm like, okay, this is my time to just be and not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, I rock climb, I backpack, I snowboard. I love hiking. I love the beach. Really anything active that gets me outside.
Sounds outdoorsy and active.
Yeah. I'll always have a book in my backpack. I always am equipped with a book. And
Any preference for book genres? Is it like nonfiction, fiction, science literature? What is it?
I like romance. I like sci-fi and fantasy, and I like nonfiction, like spiritual growth books or anything to do with nutrition.
Gotcha. Favorite sci-fi book?
The Dresden Files.
Oh, okay.
It's like more fantasy.
I feel like I saw maybe a few episodes of a TV interpretation of that.
It was not good.
It was not good, but I'm sure the book was much better. Yeah.
Oh my God. The books are amazing. I think there's 17 out now, and he's shooting for 24,
wow.
The author.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's, sometimes the book, the movie or TV interpretation of books fails to live up to expectation. Sometimes you get lucky and there's a really good one, but there's a lot more stories out there of books, being better than their visual counterparts.
For sure.
I think that has a lot to do, though. I mean, obviously, it has to do with the skill of the people who do the production, but also it's hard to live up to someone's mind's eye expectation of a character that they really love, even visually. I mean, you read a book and you may have some visual descriptors of how a character looks, but you're doing a lot of filling in the blanks in your own imagination. And to have to even pick an actor or actress to embody that, it's like you're taking the chance that it's not going to meet up to what a lot of people saw in their heads. So.
For sure. But I will say that Harry Potter probably did the best job ever.
I think that's fair.
With the trio.
I mean, I say that it's fair, but I never read the books, so I'm just going to say that the movies were pretty good on their own, and it's a fair judge. There was one, I think it was a James Patterson book. When I was like a teenager, I read some James Patterson like crime novels because I was trying to get more into reading, and my grandmother recommended them. And then I had something to talk to my grandma about. But one of the books they made into a movie, and it was so bad. They changed so many things. It was like, why does this even have the same title? But anyway, so all right, we'll get off books, and I will have to wrap up because we've been talking a while now. But that was a lot of awesome information about your practice and what you do. Thank you for coming on and explaining that. I hope our listeners learned something. I feel like I did, and hopefully everyone can get in touch with you. We'll put your information right in the podcast, and we'll head next door in a little bit to get you in front of the green screen. But to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Allison, for coming down and talking with us. That was an awesome amount of knowledge. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hi, I'm Allison Massa with Bloom with Alma, and you can find me either at my website, www.bloomwithalma.com. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Bloom with Alma. Also, I'm on Facebook, Bloom with Alma, YouTube, Bloom with Alma, and then my phone number is 631-428-0926, and you can either give me a call or shoot me a text.